Analysts say Singaporeans are among the top buyers of property in Johor Bahru, which has seen prices jump in the first half of this year. But recently, some Singaporeans have discovered they are not the legal owners of the Malaysian properties they had bought. At least 100 of them are now locked in a legal dispute with a Malaysian developer, alleging it was not upfront about the sales terms and conditions. Property lawyers on both sides are now urging buyers to read the fine print when buying overseas. Now, for more, I'm joined by our reporter, Rebecca Mateo. Rebecca, welcome to the studio. Bring us up to speed. How did this story come about?
So one of the home buyers of the property in Malaysia actually wrote into us, and I picked it up, decided to follow up with him. And I eventually met up with him and another property buyer here in Singapore. They gave me access to documents relevant to the purchase back then. So they included things like WhatsApp group chat, emails, screenshots, as well as court documents. And so I wrote in the help of my colleague, who is a former lawyer, Nasra Rahim, which you might have heard of her over the TV. She helped me analyze the legal documents, and it is now an ongoing lawsuit. So I made a trip down to Johor as well to take a look at the property, and I met up with another buyer there. Let's take a look.
To purchase.
For Singaporean Sebastian Tan, this three-bedder Johor Bahru condominium is meant to be a haven.
So this is more for my family, my grandchildren, as a weekend home. The other property which I bought together with a pool of my friends, that is purely for investment.
He snagged this place for around 275,000 Singapore dollars, a price some would consider a bargain. But recently, while chatting with a lawyer friend, Mr. Tan found out he had bought the unit under what's called a private lease scheme, or PLS. This is unique to some properties in Malaysia. You don't own the property, but instead buy a lease, almost like a rental agreement, for say 99 years. The developer is the actual owner. The people who buy are tenants, must ask permission to sell or rent, and could come with conditions attached. In contrast, Singapore does not have a similar concept. Instead of lease, it is leasehold, or a form of property ownership. Buyers have full rights to rent or sell. Malaysian lawyers say their country's private lease scheme, or PLS, is legal, but confusion can sometimes happen because buyers sign on a standard sales and purchase agreement, or SPA.
SPA means you deserve the ownership, you deserve the strata title, separate from the master title. But whereby in PLS, this lease scheme, all you get is just a longer so-called tenancy. You get a 99 years lease period.
All that means is buyers may not have the same rights as they might for a Singapore property.
They do not have a voting right to choose their community members there. So a future challenge would be who should be the representative of that particular condominium? Who should decide how the condo should be run? What if the corporation does not run well? You get what I'm saying? If there is any legal dispute over this corporation, the creditors will go after the land of this company, isn't it? Then they'll sell the land, they'll auction the land. Then what happens to the lessees?
A Singaporean lawyer says the value of the property might also be affected.
The calculation for that, you can imagine, is very different. It should actually almost, I would say, be akin to rental. How much are you paying to rent the property for X number of years?
Many, like Mr. Tan, who bought the JB property, only realized this difference recently. About 170 buyers, mostly Singaporeans like him, are in a WhatsApp group discussing next steps. Some still wondering what it means to buy a lease for freehold land, or whether they could rent, sell, or refinance their property. So far, since 2022, I understand that at least 80 Singaporean buyers in two groups are taking legal action against the condo developer and an investment firm in the Malaysian courts. The buyers claim the sale conditions were not made clear to them and want the strata title legally changed to give them full ownership. I found out at least 70 condo buyers filed a complaint in June with the Singapore Council of Estate Agencies against the real estate agency that marketed the property to them. The CEA acknowledges receiving this matter, but from court documents I've seen, the developer has argued buyers should have been aware and that the private lease scheme is valid and legitimate. They say the buyers have also passed the legal period to make any claims.
So Shah, I just want to add a little bit about the Council of Estate Agencies. So they are a statutory board that looks at the professional conduct of agents as well as consumers' interests. As far as I understand, there are practice guidelines on marketing of foreign properties. The guidelines lay out several steps that property agents and real estate agencies have to take when marketing foreign properties. For example, the agency will have to provide training for agents involved in selling overseas properties, and they have to make sure that they have sufficient knowledge on how to buy a property in a foreign land, financing arrangements, as well as marketing materials. So they need to make sure that all these marketing materials are made available in English so that all buyers can read on it. And essentially it's about how they market the properties and how they sell the properties. They are responsible for selling the properties. After all, they may not have sufficient legal knowledge to advise buyers. So there is also an act governing their work, the agents' work here, even though they might be selling the properties overseas, outside of Singapore. So I understand that this guideline, however, cannot be used retrospectively, and that means that the CEA will have to use their legislation, regulation, as well as guidelines back then, which this case happened they bought this property about a decade ago, to assess the incident.
And so with this case, Rebecca, what should we do when we're looking at buying properties overseas?
So conveyancing lawyers I spoke to, in fact, from both countries told me that it is very important to do your homework before buying a property overseas and get a lawyer to scrutinize all the terms and conditions such as rights to sell and sublease the property, because all these issues might only come up when a buyer perhaps tries to dispose of the property. And one local lawyer I spoke to says that information on buying a property overseas may not always be readily available online. So it is still best to engage local agents who have been on the ground for a while. Let's have a listen.
I think many times property is actually governed by, it's governed by law, it's also governed in some part by custom. There are many things that maybe are not entirely clear to the layman, and I think it's important to actually get a professional who actually works in that country to guide you through the process. Oftentimes it's not easy just to Google things out.
So that's pretty good advice, Rebecca, especially as more people are looking beyond Singapore for properties, perhaps also hoping to diversify their investments. But where are Singaporeans buying off late?
Right, Shah, let's hear from you first. So what do you think are the top markets?
Well, apart from Malaysia, Australia seems to be an obvious choice due to several factors. We're looking at cultural ties, educational opportunities, and the proximity as well. Perhaps the UK too. I'm thinking families or parents would want to provide a residential base for their children who are studying there. Am I right?
I think you're pretty spot on. So most Singaporeans are buying in the UK, Japan, and Australia. So the three markets are desirable as holiday destinations and for their investment value. So the UK and Australia, people are buying in these countries for very similar reasons. And the reasons for the investment in these countries could be due to the stability in the market, the similar legal systems, and it could also be the case, as you've mentioned, that the parents have sent their children there to study, so they decided to invest in a property there. And for Japan, you and I know that it's a popular travel destination for Singaporeans, and there is high interest in Japanese culture, which adds to the appeal again. So Japan also has low interest rates, and this helps increase investor interest. But another country that is increasingly of interest is Dubai. It is the fastest growing country that Singaporeans are buying properties in based on experts' observations. But with that said, as you mentioned, Malaysia is still going strong with all the developments between the two countries, good exchange rates, lower cost of living, and of course proximity. So we just saw reports, in fact, on how home sales are picking up in Johor in the previous quarter. Let's have a look.
James Lim is a Singaporean businessman who has a factory in Malaysia and is going to set up a second one in the Johor SEZ. Convenience is the main reason why he's bought this freehold apartment just across the causeway.
I go to Sinai every morning, so I will take about 45 minutes from here to Sinai. So from the factory itself, sometimes when I come back, it's late already, in between the traffic jam time, if you tired, I just go up and stay at the unit there.
The condo is also about 900 meters from the upcoming JB Singapore Rapid Transit System. When ready in 2026, it will be the third land link between the two countries. Mr. Lim tells me that in his business circle, many more Singapore firms will be or want to move their manufacturing to the SEZ. Analysts say these factors have been driving demand, especially from Singaporeans.
We have indicated actually that there's a close to 3.5 times increase in terms of demand index in Johor Bahru in August this year, 2024, against October 2019. So you do see that a surge of demand there.
Another real estate firm, Savills, says more foreign direct investments, such as data centers, is another factor driving up sales and prices of private homes in JB. Condo prices saw a nearly 30% increase in the first half of this year compared to before the pandemic. Units on average are about more than 135,000 Singapore dollars per unit now. But analysts say Singaporeans aren't property shopping as much elsewhere in Malaysia. Those who buy are doing it for investment in areas like Klang Valley, where the capital, Kuala Lumpur, is. This includes people like Mr. Lim, whom I talked to earlier, who also owns properties in Genting and KL. Moving forward, market watchers say there could be other investment opportunities.
There are more and more development of townships, like new townships, right? A lot of developers are doing that as well. There's slightly a bit more away from the urban centers. There's its own hospital, education hub, shopping malls, and it makes it a lot more livable.
So due to their popularity, Rebecca, does that mean that property prices in places like Johor Bahru will continue to go up?
Right. Perhaps let's not speculate, but there could be some reasons why prices may continue to go up. Now, I have seen real estate agents using the rapid transit system that is happening in about 2 years' time to market their properties, and I think that it has worked so far. And also another point to bring up here is the Johor Singapore Special Economic Zone the SEZ is not, well, it's not used as much right now. That's because that's a more recent development, but market watchers are saying that the JSSEZ might boost prices further. And I think the reason why there's a little bit of uncertainty at this point in time is because the boundaries are not very clear yet. Let's take a look at this map. It is the proposed SEZ map by the Johor state government. So the scope is not approved by governments on both sides, meaning the Malaysian and Singapore governments yet. But here's what we know. The proposed area would span across 6 districts: Johor Bahru, Iskandar Puteri, Pasir Gudang, Pontian, Kulai and Kota Tinggi. But right now, we don't know exactly what the JSSEZ would bring, what kind of business activities we would be able to see in that area. But so far, we have heard of plans for Forest City, a special financial zone that may boost investment activities. And the Malaysian, in fact, in an attempt to revitalize the Smart City initiative, which is Forest City, the Malaysian government has actually announced tax exemptions for family offices and low corporate tax rate. So all this could boost economic activities in the area, which may drive appetite for property there among Singaporeans. Now, there are national schemes like MM2H, Malaysia, My Second Home, aimed at providing incentives like long-term visa for people to buy, retire there or live there for long. Now, all these are advice and reasons for people, but not really the kind, as with any kind of investment, there are pros and cons and there will be some risks involved after all.
And as you said, it's always worth talking to legal experts and agents before we make that purchase. Very insightful story, Rebecca. Thank you very much for speaking with us. That was Rebecca Mateo on buying properties in Johor Bahru and beyond the region.